In this video, we have a very special announcement for the channel. We're going to talk about the movie, the studios in 2023. Who's going to come out on top? We're also going to talk about this kind of thing where some fans seemingly root for Disney to fail. What's the psychology behind that? That's an interesting thing to talk about. We're going to break it all down up next on OG 55. Welcome aboard to another episode of OG 55. We are joined today by a very, very special guest, friend of the channel, who has actually been on a few times before, Mr. Jay Shear of the Story Geeks. Jay, welcome back, brother.
It is always a pleasure to be here. I always have fun with you guys, and I can't wait to get into the topics.
Yes, absolutely. If you can let everybody home know where they can find you on social media, my friend.
You can find me right here at Jay Shear over there on Twitter. It's pretty much the only place where I'm semi-active, and I always question whether or not I want to be active there too. But that's where you can find me. I occasionally tweet things out.
Perfect. Follow him on the Twitters. And diagonal to me, underneath Jay, is Mr. Vash Sky, Dr. Dre, host of the Freshly Squeezed show here on the channel. Dre, welcome back, sir.
Hello there. Happy to be back. This is amazing panel. I don't know. Have we all four done a show together like this?
Ooh, long time ago.
Long time ago. Okay. All right. Well, it feels fresh, which is freshly squeezed. That's got to do the synergy. But this should be a great show, and I'm so excited to be part of it. If you guys want to follow me, you can go do so right down there at Vash Sky. Go ahead and type that in for all the, as Christine Wastelands McCarthy would say, for all the robust discussion that if you want to take part in, you can go ahead. Follow me for that. OG, do you have the famous Walt Disney prop there?
I absolutely do. Take it away, Walt.
And there's the biggest bargain of all.
The biggest bargain of all is correct. And that, of course, is going to be, Orange Grove 55, where we have shows like yours, OG, the original OG, Orange Grove 55 show. Orange Nerd, where we talk about all things studios and C-suite and so forth. It is fun. And George, you have an amazing show on there as well, Citrus Corner, where we talk about all things Walt Disney World. And my show as well, Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice, news, and info, squeezed fresh, right from the Grove. I do apologize, Jay. I didn't actually have an intro drop for you, so I'll play it now.
Pay attention, it's Joe time.
There you go.
Nice.
There we go.
Nice.
Jay is officially in the house, and down below we got Mr. Family Man 23, host of our Walt Disney World show here on the channel, Citrus Corner. George, welcome back, sir.
Thank you very much. Glad to be back. And as Mr. Vash Sky said, yeah, it's been a while since the four of us did a show together. But yes, it does feel it has that brand spanking new car smell, if you will.
Exactly. Or that new attraction smell. New attractions kind of have that kind of smell too, right?
Yeah, like that brand new. And then 2 weeks later, it smells like old diapers and
yeah. It goes from the orange zest of maybe soaring over California to I don't know, whatever the smell is on the Simpsons ride, but that smell, you all know that smell, guys.
Leaking hydraulic fluid, probably.
Oh. Not good.
So where can they find you on social media, George?
Yes, absolutely. You can find me on my YouTube channel, Disney Family Man 23. If you want to interact with me, you could do so on Twitter at Disney George. You could check out the new podcast I'm part of called A Walk with Walt. And of course, my home base here right on Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
Got it. Perfect. All right, let's dive right in, fellas.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to all who come to this happy place,
welcome to Orange Grove 55.
All right, let's dive right in. So our first topic is actually a big channel announcement. Big channel announcement. Now, we have Mr. Jay Shear here, and Jay has been a friend of the channel and a collaborator. with OG55 for a long time, and we love Jay. We done many videos with him. We talk all the time in the DMs on Twitter. Talk, just getting nerdy with the C-suite stuff and the studio side of things, even the parks and all that good stuff. So we kind of came together, right, Jay? And well, actually, you approached me, and you had an idea. I'm gonna let you take over and kind of set the table as to how this all kind of came about, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So, for those of you who do know, I have 2 different channels that I run. I run How Stories Work with Jay Shear. That's basically for writers who I want to connect with and have conversations with. And then I also run a channel called The Story Geeks. And the Story Geeks channel goes all the way back to 2016, started as a podcast. The goal of that podcast was to figure out what impactful messages were being delivered to us through the stories that we love. Had a lot of really great guests on that show. We had Dileep Rao from Inception. He was an actor in Inception. We had people from the Empire podcast on our show to talk about film and to break down film. You had fantastic guests, really, really great stuff. We had comic book writers, a lot of people join us for those shows. And then the pandemic kind of took that show and decreased our ability to get content out. A bunch of my team had a bunch of stuff going on during the pandemic, job stuff. Some of them had kids. Some of them just weren't interested in talking about geek stuff anymore. And I said, well, I'm just going to go do this by myself. So I took off on the Story Geeks, and I was doing 2 channels at once. And I didn't really have a team anymore. And I was just kind of like doing stuff, and it was fun. But I kept seeing OG talk about on Twitter how, hey, do you guys want us to talk, even more about some of the other things other than parks? Should we get into some of the stories that are out there? Should we start talking about those things?
Yes.
And I've had an amazing experience with all of the Orange Grove 55 crew. Everybody you guys have had on your show has been amazing. You've introduced me to a bunch of cool people. Both George and Dre are fantastic. And so I was thinking about that. And I was thinking, well, we have this history of talking about films and TV shows and stories. We have a great rapport. We tend to approach topics from the same place. We don't tend to approach them from like I'm team A and team B sucks, we don't tend to do that. Neither of us tend to do that. And so I thought to myself, I go, well, if you guys want to, I would love to incorporate the Story Geeks into Orange Grove 55, much the way Freshly Squeezed and Citrus Corner are a part of Orange Grove 55. I said, what if we do something like that? And so I threw that over to OG, and we're making it happen.
We're making it happen. We're bringing Story Geeks into the fold. Jay Shear, Story Geeks, is officially part of the OG 55 team now.
I even have my logo wear on.
There it is. Yes. So Story Geeks, you'll be seeing more content from Story Geeks, just like you see, Citrus Corner, just like you see Freshly Squeezed. Story Geeks is interesting because now, for those of you familiar with the channel, we do have a show called Orange Nerd, which does kind of do, we talk about corporate stuff, and we also get into like movie reviews and things like that. What's interesting about Story Geeks, though, and what makes it kind of unique and separates it from what we do in Orange Nerd is Jay. And Jay is a writer, so he comes at it from that creative perspective, right? And Jay, I say it almost every time you're on. Now, he did a Darth Vader video that was absolutely phenomenal. And he was kind of explaining the psychology of what makes Vader scary, right? And that's the kind of stuff that I love. The content Jay does is fantastic. And I just love that stuff. And it's a deep dive. It's from that creative perspective, things that you don't even consciously realize, right? Like the Vader thing and all that. Jay will kind of explain it, discuss it. I mean, when you came to me, Jay, I couldn't say no to that. I absolutely love your stuff, and I think you're going to be an incredible, part of this team, this OG team. And I just want to thank you and welcome you to the family, brother.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I I have been approached by other networks and things in the past, and they've said, "Hey, do you want to throw your shows up on our channel?" And it's never felt like a perfect. It's never felt like a perfect fit. But because I felt so welcomed by all of you guys, and because we tend to have similar ways of talking about topics. We come with opinions. We discuss those opinions. We come away with new thoughts and new ideas. I thought, you know what? It just is such a good match. And the fact that you guys are so welcoming, even after I suggested it, it makes me feel really good. So I cannot wait to have more discussions with you guys. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. We love having you here, Jay. Dre, I'll take it down to you, brother. Anything to add? Ask Jay. Let the audience. Anything you want to discuss?
Oh yeah. Well, as I was telling Jay before the show actually started, when the prospect came up that he might be joining the channel, I was like, oh, this is fantastic with Story Geeks, who, a show that I already really like, really dig, really get a kick out of. Obviously, it's what introduced us as a channel to Jay himself. I was like, okay, well, first of all, his content's awesome, but it also folds in nicely to our content because, as I was telling him before, we handle back house stuff. Right. We handle, stuff that happens backstage, let's say, right? With C-Suite and Kristen Waysons McCarthy, Bob Iger, Bob Chapek, all that kind of stuff. We handle some of the studio stuff. But we don't really handle, when we're talking about this, the content itself, right? It's all about the mechanism. It's all about the engine, but never the car, right? Never the product, never the showcase, never what's on stage. And I think Jay is brilliant with that. I mean, obviously he's a brilliant guy. Don't get me wrong about all kinds of stuff, but with Story Geeks and the niche that they've the amazing channel has found itself in, I think it really folds in nicely with the content that we produce on here. And we've talked about it before, OG, about like, oh man, should we be doing reviews about certain things when they come out? How can we incorporate those? And I just think Jay brings something to the channel that is so valuable and is so profound that I can't wait. I think this is gonna be awesome.
Absolutely, 100%. Mr. Family Man, anything to add and to what Mr. Vashkai stated?
Yeah, just actually to echo Dre's major points. I think Jay will bring something extra to what we already discuss as part of this channel and just give it that extra flair. Because as you had mentioned, OG, Jay kind of dives into topics related to film that a lot of people may not really focus on or think about, but he brings it in a way where then it makes you question it and it makes you rethink something that when you go back and watch that film, it's like, okay, now I see what he's talking about. I know. And then you see like those small little Easter eggs, if you will, as part of the films. And I think, for Jay to incorporate that as part of the OG 55 channel, I think it'll up the channel to what it already was, but then just give it a little more pizzazz, so to speak.
Yes, absolutely. Well, dare I say we're going to go even more balls to more walls, George?
That's right. Gotta do it.
Absolutely. Well, Jay, welcome aboard, brother. And we're looking forward to all the great content from Story Geeks. And of course, everyone here will be making appearances on Story Geeks. Jay is going to have fantastic guests that have never been on the channel before. It's going to be a really, really, really fun time. We're all going to nerd out, geek out. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be absolutely awesome.
It's going to be a lot of fun. In the show we have coming up, just so we can kind of promo that a little bit, we have a show. The first show we're going to do from a Story Geeks perspective on OG 55. We will be talking about the films or TV, or even if it's part of a book you read or something, the stories that impacted you the most from 2022. So we're doing a little bit of a retrospective. A lot of people will tell you, here's my top 10. We're not going to go there. We're going to go a little deeper. You're going to hear a little bit more about how the stories that were out there had a little bit of an impact on us, and maybe the way we thought, or the way we felt, or maybe even changed our perspective a little bit. So we'll talk about that on our upcoming show.
Awesome. See, this is why we love Jay on the channel. This is that really kind of cool, different angle on these things that he brings to the table. So awesome stuff. Jay, welcome aboard, brother.
Can't wait to get into it. It's always fun.
Perfect. All right, so we got a lot of topics today. We're gonna break some stuff down today. A lot of great, interesting things on the books today. First thing I want to talk about. Look, fandom in general, right? I mean, especially if like you're on like Twitter, right? There's a lot of hot take, a lot of opinions. Even on like YouTube and stuff, there's a lot of voices out there, right? And I've noticed over the years, there seems to be this kind of prevailing sort of like, I don't want to say narrative, but sort of like this thing where it almost feels like people or, our fans are kind of rooting for like the Walt Disney Company to fail, right? It's sort of like this thing where it's like, the stock is tanking, all right? Or just an example or something like that. Or, it's that kind of energy, right? And I want to kind of break this down with you guys. Like, I'll start with you, Jay. Like, do you think this comes from a place of like, just trying to knock the king off the hill kind of syndrome, right? Kind of like when Pixar was like making hit after hit after hit for like years. I remember like everyone was like, when's the first flop going to be, right? It's almost kind of like wishing like the king to take a fall. Is it like maybe that? Is there something else at play here? What's kind of like behind this energy that we're kind of seeing out there in this social media space?
I think it is a very complex problem, and I think it's coming from many different directions. Part of it is that Disney's being perceived as the Yankees right now, right? Like that's a part of it. We all want to root against the Yankees unless we are Yankees fans. Part of it's that it is the empire, right? There is an empire that has been built, and people want to see empires fall. Part of it, I think, is the I don't know what we're going to call this 10 years from now, but there's this like pandemic fallout, right? There's this sense that the pandemic upset our lives in a way, and we don't know who to blame. And so sometimes what we do is, and I think one of the things I've heard you say, OG, and everybody on this panel say, is that some people treat Disney. This is especially true of parks fans, I think, but it can be broader than that too. Some people treat Disney as their emotional support animal or their therapist, right? Like I'm going to Disney because my mental health will be better afterwards. And I'm not here to judge that. I'm not here to say that that's bad. But what I am here to say is that if something about that therapist or something about that support animal starts to become a little bit more annoying than it is therapeutic, you suddenly start to go, this isn't helping me out anymore. Now, when I go to this place, I'm still agitated, right? And so I think that there's a part of it there that exists. And then the third thing, and this is more on the content that's being pushed out side of life, is I spent I was very sick over the break, unfortunately, and over the Christmas break. And so I spent some time watching some old films. I'm like, I'm just gonna watch. My wife and I watched Avengers Infinity War, and then we watched Avengers Endgame. And I think that there is something to the leadership transition, what the studio was doing, the people and narratives that they were putting out there started to become, when the pandemic happened, people started to go, I feel like we're all more isolated. Now, when I look to my neighbor, I only see the problems that my neighbor's presenting, not the benefit that they present to me. And they started looking at how the politics were speaking into. So we could have ignored. It could have been where it was a Brie Larson saying some things out here that are kind of wild, turned into
very much.
Yes, exactly. That turned into, wait a second, Disney's backing that. Because what we started to see was we went from Infinity War and Endgame, which, by the way, upon rewatch, are masterpieces. Then we started to get films that were, let's call them less than, and some of them were kind of preachy. And so we started to see that. And we started to go like, you know what? You're not delivering to me anymore, which you used to be delivering. And now it feels like it's coming with a message. And you've got leadership problems, and I'm kind of depressed from the pandemic. So you had this cauldron of being upset. And then the one last thing I'll say, and I'll shut up, is I think the last thing is that, and we've talked about this because we all have friends that do this, and this is not to disparage those people at all.
Oh no,
But-
please do.
The algorithms out there tend to reward 2 times the people. They tend to reward people who are grifting and people who are shilling. And so you get the people that's like, I'm only going to be positive about stuff, and the algorithm goes, find other people who just want positive messages. And you go, I only want to be negative about stuff. Find people who only want negative. And the algorithms tend to reward those people. And so we start to see that more and more often, right? So it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. We're all upset. The content has actually gone downhill a little bit. We don't know who to blame. And then we have the shills and the grifters, and they're both putting out their messages. And we go, I better join a group. I got to be on a team, right? I got to be on some team. And so, so that's where I think I see a lot of the discomfort with these areas.
100%. Vash, some thoughts on like rooting for Disney to fail, the kind of energy behind that. Where are you standing on this?
Yeah, a lot of what you were saying I think is correct, but Jay, I think you're wrong on the algorithms thing, because I know OG, you've been labeled as a shill, but I don't really see us really riding that wave in the same way.
It's true. I know. I get called a shill all the time. Anytime you get ball man bad, any benefit of the doubt,
which is weird, because it's like, I mean, we have a very balanced perspective. I think we certainly have personalities that are balanced, but. Oh, say la vie. But no, I think you're right, Jay, because and this I think this was starting to come around. I think personally when Star Wars was acquired. At first, it was Pixar. It's like, okay, brands go together. They've been doing business together. All good, right? Then people were worried with Marvel, but then it was like we got Avengers right after that, right? In 2012, and it's like, okay, I think we're going to be okay. Iger sends a whole lot of money towards Marvel's way in order to get Captain America 2 and Thor 2 off the ground, and I think people were okay with the results, with having Disney being the kind of shepherd of all that, right? And then Star Wars happened, and it was like, okay, well, because I mean, even myself, I was optimistic. It's like, well, I mean, look at Marvel. Come on, we're fine, guys. Don't even worry about it. But I think what people didn't necessarily anticipate, and even Disney didn't necessarily anticipate, was that Lucasfilm was not a turnkey operation like the previous two, right? And so I think there was definitely some mismanagement there. And that's when I heard the real charge, like, it's not just, individual movies and so forth. It's like, now we're going after the studios, specifically Disney. And that's kind of when I've felt to kind of ramp up here a lot, especially post Last Jedi and so forth, Solo and all that. People didn't say, oh, this is Lucasfilm. They said this was Disney Star Wars, right? That's how they phrased it. That's how they shaped it.
The messaging was totally there, right? Because it wasn't Disney Marvel. It was Disney Star Wars,
right? And that was the key, the indicator. Ooh, this is a little bit different there. And so I think, Jay, you're right. I think the pandemic definitely exacerbated some issues, because as people were trapped inside, as people couldn't actually go on with their daily lives, an emphasis was placed on content, and now it's like, oh, wait a minute. What's going on here? What is happening? And we saw Disney, I think they kind of played into it a little bit, because now they're not just messaging through their content. Now they're making messages, right? They're putting out even, kind of socio-political statements and so forth. And now it's like, okay, this is now getting to a point here where it's becoming something different. That's why I was saying before, DeSantis pivoting in the way that he did, right, and going after Disney, I was like, that's smart politics, especially in Florida, because that it definitely plays into, at least for some Floridians, this thing that we're talking about here, that they want to get one over on them, and I think it's been that way ever since. And it's really kind of unfortunate, because we know that obviously the CEO has tremendous influence, right? But these studios are kind of, I mean, they're individual silos, and you really have distinct leaderships, throughout, and even though the CEO does have a lot of impact, he's not managing the day-to-day and all these different things, right? It really does come down to the studios themselves and the tone set by the CEO and so forth. So it really is, it's sad to see. I certainly don't like it, right? And it has been harder to be a Disney fan at all. I mean, that definitely doesn't get me any favors with some crowds, but
Chill.
exactly, right, exactly. And it doesn't matter how critical you are, you'll always be labeled as a Disney fan, right? And that has kind of taken on a almost a disparaging remark in some circles, and it's just kind of feeding on itself, building on itself, and it's something I don't think Chapek truly understood. I don't really think Iger understands it either, but there is a momentum mounting against Disney here, which is it's tough to see, and I think it might be damaging to a certain degree.
Yeah, and here's my kind of mental dilemma though, is how much of this is real or how much of it is just perceived, right? Because it's like you have a lot, like NJ, you touched upon it, a lot of grifting going on, and negativity sells, and negativity has always sold. I mean, this isn't like a new thing. I mean, your local news reports on negative, really tragic, ugly stories because that's what gets eyeballs on the screen. If the local news got up there and said everything is great today, weather's perfect, everything, there would be no viewership. So negativity does sell, and I think that this kind of space that we're in, this like nerd space and Disney park space and all that, they kind of realize it's beneficial for their content. So it's like, if you make a bald man bad video about Chapek, well, you're going to get those views, you're definitely going to get those views. So I think there's a lot of like, when I say what's real and what's perceived, I feel because you see so much kind of like the floodgates opening with just video after video after video about how terrible Disney is and how it's collapsing and it's the end of Disney and all this stuff. It gives people the perception that Disney is, I think, worse off than it actually is. Because you have all these kind of like grifting entities sort of like vying for more views, more clicks. So it's like, is Disney really doing worse than, say, a Warner Brothers Discovery? Well, not really. I mean, if you look at the stock price and how each one, not really.
Sure, yeah.
The whole industry is really kind of taking a hit. But if you were just the casual, the normie, you really wouldn't know that. You would think it was just Disney, because when you go, every time you go onto YouTube, every time you go onto Twitter, it's just Disney, 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 and it's Disney, 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 because that's what gets those eyeballs. It's the most relevant kind of studio. But George, what are your thoughts on this whole idea of like people kind of rooting for failure? Is it, or people kind of turned off to the brand? Where are you kind of at with this?
I think there's two different kinds of perspectives on this. First off, I'm going to start off with the corporate side of Disney, so to speak, where it kind of branches off. You have, as Jay and Vash had mentioned about with Marvel and Lucasfilm, you have two brand companies that have exceeded before Disney had acquired them. So you already have a fan base of Star Wars, of Indiana Jones, of Spider-Man, or even just before the shows, the comic books of Marvel. So you're taking all those fans and dumping them into diehard Disney fans. So when you then mix everyone that has their own individual passion, you're going to start butting heads, with a lot of things, because then you're going to have people that say, well, this isn't traditional Marvel, or this isn't traditional Star Wars. Disney's diluting it. They're putting too much pixie dust on it, what have you. And then you have the Disney fans that are saying, this is Disney. This is how it's always been. They've had Indiana Jones in the parks before it was acquired. They had Star Tours in the parks and what have you. And yes, I do agree to the fact of that Disney has not made best choice decisions after acquiring these companies. But as far as now the fandom goes, it's almost like back in grade school. I don't know if you fellas remember, you have that assignment where you have 3 bubbles and you have a bubble for one side and a bubble on another, and then both bubbles intertwine of how they kind of correlate with one another. This is what this is in real life. And then it all ties into social media. As social media grows, as platforms grow, people tend to use that rather than keep your frustration in your house. What do? You then go on social media and outpours your passion, your opinion, your negativity, your positivity. And somewhere, some way in the world, in the cosmos, someone is going to disagree with you. Right. And a lot of people do not take well to criticism, whether it's constructive or whether it's just downright arrogance. You know, so I think it all stems down to whether or not how an individual is. And I do agree with Jay. I think the pandies kind of put everyone in this mentality that we're all up in arms about something, because we literally had nothing to do. We were all encaved in our houses, and it's like we become these jumped up little cave people, and it's like you don't know what to think of anything. So it's like, well, might as well, instead of staring at the 4 walls, how can I make someone's life miserable today? Let's see how we can figure that out, so to speak. But I'm the type of person that, and we've said it so many times on this show, we want the best for the Walt Disney Company. We want the best for anybody. Whatever we mention on this show, it's a place of love. It's a place of critique. It's a place of constructive criticism. And even if our opinions do come off harsh, which some of them more so come upon me because I'm just sarcastic that way. That's just who I am. But it comes from, as Don Rickles would say, it comes from a place of love. And I was a huge Don Rickles fan. So it's to the notion that if something is wrong that the company that we seem is deeming bad, we're going to say that. It doesn't mean we hate Disney. It doesn't mean, it's just we're calling them out to say, hey, this is a mistake. This is how I would do it. But we also talk about the positivity that the company brings. When they do something good, we showcase that on this channel. So I think that's where it differentiates. So I do believe there are channels out there that literally just kind of use their platforms with nothing but hatred and negativity just so they can get the clicks and the views and the subscribers. And those are the ones that literally paint a picture of what the Walt Disney Company is. So subconsciously, when someone looks at the company and say, oh, I've been watching videos or I've been looking at tweets of the company, I don't want to go to a vacation at Disney anymore. I don't want to watch that film. It's because it's already setting it in your mind that you're going to hate it before you even watch it.
Right. No, 100%.
It's interesting too, because we talk about the grift, we talk about the clicks, right?
Right.
It is interesting. I find it interesting. If the grifters weren't profitable and hating Disney, they wouldn't necessarily do it, right? The grift is there for a reason, and it's tangible, and I do think that that part is interesting also too. One of the things I didn't mention was, when I brought up DeSantis before, to go a step further than that, after that happened in April of 2022, we saw an entire political party actually rally against Disney. We saw major members of Congress say some things that they were going to remove this privilege, remove that privilege, and so forth, which says to me that they were feeling it within their constituency, that it was a popular thing to hate on Disney. I've been to some big political forums where they have a special section just for Disney, and now I'm seeing Disney not just people attacking the company, but expanding that out so that Disney, it's representative of all of Hollywood, which is interesting. Some people will say, oh, this thing happened in Hollywood or whatever. Oh, well, thanks Disney, or okay Disney, that kind of thing. And it's like, well, that's not even a Disney thing, right. But yet that's the association being made. I think it is a fascinating time. And George, I think you're correct, and Jay, I think you're correct, in how it's kind of like this thing that's building upon itself, and And I think that's where the rooting to fail really does come from.
Well, it's interesting too, because it's like, it kind of reminds me of the 45th president, right? You brought up like the political thing and all that. I mean, hating on him was also kind of fashionable, to say the least.
Oh, yeah.
CNN like lived on that for like years, you
A lot
know.
of
I mean,
comedians did too. You know, that was a lot of their act and so forth. So you saw it build from different segments of society.
right, and I think it stems from really just and to kind of bring it back to Disney. I think when you have an entity or even a person like 45, right? I think that if you have something that people are passionate about overall, people love Disney overall. I mean, this is a 100-year-old company that people have grown up with. You know, their parents and their parents and their parents. Everyone grew up on Disney. I think that the reason why, in my opinion, my theory, why you're seeing this sort of fashionable, why it's so fashionable to attack the mouse is because it's something that everyone is sort of connected to. You know, everyone's not connected to necessarily Paramount Pictures. You know what I'm saying? So when you run a story in the trades or you do a YouTube video on Paramount Pictures, you're not going to get those eyeballs like you would if it's the Walt Disney Company, right? Correct. So I think that's a big part of it. But go ahead, Jay. What anything to kind of elaborate?
I was just gonna throw out there. This is just an encouragement to people, because one of the things that, and I think George was really touching on this, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Where is it coming from? Like, where does all this originate? How does the grift work? How does the shilling work? It works because a lot of times what we do is we start to have an emotion, right? And we go, okay, I have an emotion. And if somebody else tells us, I have a place to put that. You're angry. I can tell you why you're angry. It's because Disney sucks. We go, right. Awesome. That's why I'm angry. And I think that one of the things that you guys have always done since the first moment I started listening to you, and one of the things that we've tried to do in the Story Geeks, is to actually say, you know what? Wait a minute. Let's actually have a deeper conversation about the whys that get you to the point that says this sucks. Mm-hmm. Because I firmly believe that you don't have a good opinion until you know not only your first why, because I feel angry, your second why are you angry? Your third why did that trigger you? Your fourth why. You have to ask all of those questions before you have any expertise on the topic or any ability to communicate to another human being in a way that is not fundamentally a 5-year-old saying, I think Disney sucks, or I think that it's the most amazing thing in the world. And I think that's why shows like this are really beneficial, because what we get a chance to do is we get a chance to talk about all of these things and put the concerns in the right places, as opposed to I'm only creating heroes and I'm only creating villains and that's all I'm doing today. And so I think that's what a lot of what happens is this emotion just becomes unchecked. And then someone else goes, I have that emotion too. And we go, let's build a tribe. And what other tribe can we attack? You know? And so I think that it's helpful to really dig in, really understand the root of the problem, because that's how you get change made. I mean, you can get change made by yelling at people too, but guess what? It's not always the change that you want. Because guess what? Reservations are still in place.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
True. That's true.
Exactly.
That's true.
No, exactly.
What you wish for.
Well, and you look, it's that's the other thing too, is as a fan community, especially in the Disney parks community, maybe because I'm really close to that side of the fandom. Oh, man, we got to do better, family. We got to do better, because I mean this community, this Disney parks community. I mean, look, and I've said it many times. Maybe if the copyright gods don't ding me for it, one day I'll play the clip. It's from the Imagineering story with Kim Irvine. She was literally scared. This head Imagineer at Disney was literally scared to go to be out at night because of the threats from park fans, because they added IP to Small World. Now, come on, fandom. That's disgusting. That this woman has to fear for her safety because she's adding the White Rabbit into Small World. And you wonder why they don't take us seriously. Constructive criticism helps. Alia, our friend Alia, who we love dearly, she talks about it all the time. Fill out those surveys. If you don't like the way the Walt Disney Company is, fill out the surveys. You don't like what they're doing, but with your wallet. These are constructive ways to send Disney a message. You know, ranting and raving on Twitter, screaming and yelling at Kim Irvine, all that garbage isn't getting you anywhere. It's the equivalent of just like it's of a child having a tantrum. You know, you see a child having a tantrum at the supermarket, you're like, oh my God. You know, right? And you don't even, that's what it is. That's essentially what it is. And I think as a fandom in this parks bubble, we got to do better. If we want them to take us seriously, we got to do better.
Well, and it's like even at times when people post photos online, whether it's like something small or big, which could be very well be very true, you know, sort of like maintenance issues or what have you. And yes, a majority of the time Disney does need to step up their game with certain maintenance issues and all that, which I mean, we'll probably get into that in another video.
Oh no, we're going to talk about it in this video. We will bring that up.
Well, then scratch that comment. That anyways, that but just in the notion aspect of and I can only speak for Walt Disney World because I go there more than Disneyland, that when I go to the parks, I'm not necessarily scoping out, oh, that light bulb is out, or that light bulb is flickering, or there's a crack in the sidewalk. I'm not focused on that. If I had to use my hard-earned money, or if I was an annual pass holder that went 5 times a week, and I had to be going into the park for those specific purposes, it's like, why am I even an annual pass holder at all? I'm not even using my pass for what it should be used. It's to go to the parks to enjoy myself. And it honestly became where the parks became this like a news center that people are going there to report things. Oh, today at the Magic Kingdom, this has happened. It's like, can you just go there and just have fun? If you're going to post something of that you're enjoying your 8th Dole Whip for the day, and you're on the brink of vomiting or something, and you're about to go on Big Thunder or what have you. Show something that's more positive. But then again, there it goes. Where do people really want to put on a video and say, yeah, I want to watch you on Big Thunder, or yeah, I want to watch you eat a Dole Whip? No, it's honestly like the National Enquirer, or like with paparazzi. You know, everyone wants to have a edgy story, and unfortunately, if you're a vlogger or a blogger or a writer, it's like they give what the people want, and sometimes it could be over exaggerated, so to speak, than to actually it be the actual true story.
Should we get into that a little bit, OG?
The maintenance thing. That was a good little segue, actually.
Good little segue.
It's a good segue.
I do have them. I do have.
Okay,
them.
cool.
So let me
I'll
go
show
ahead
your
and,
screen.
let me go ahead and share my screen real fast here.
So to kind of set the table a little bit, Disney World has been kind of going through some maintenance issues lately. It's been kind of documented. Various sites, I believe WDWNT, they've been reporting on this stuff, and kind of interesting.
Yes, it is. Look, George, live by the sword, die by the sword, right? Disney has definitely embraced social media for a good bit now, and it has led to an increased popularity for the parks that they've never before experienced. But at the same time, that has, like you said, George, but kind of been a news center. People get a lot of clicks off of what might be going wrong at the parks as well. Now, again, some of these are really bad, and but there is there's kind of a silver lining, which goes into your point, OG. But these photos come to us via WW News NT, News Today. And what they show here is some really kind of appalling kind of conditions for the parks. And look, I mean, I'm kind of like you, George. I don't go out seeking these things, but some of these things are a little bit unavoidable. They can't necessarily be ignored. And the fact that Disney has ignored some of these issues is quite striking. Now there's an update to the story, but I kind of wanted to get your guys' opinion on what you're seeing here, especially, I mean, look, I mean, and I think Tom Corliss actually talked about this as well. The maintenance issues and so forth, during the events of the pandemic when everything was shut down, everything like that, right? And people, thousands, tens of thousands of people were actually let go. It became very, very difficult to maintain some of these things, right?
Right.
And so major news sites, even WW News Today, gave them a pass. They took off their maintenance reports and so forth like that because it was just like, let's not kick a dude when he's on the ground, right? Let's go easy for a little bit here, but. We now seen, I think, 2 consecutive increase in prices recently, George. I think Walt Disney World actually increased prices today, interestingly enough. We've seen some, microtransactions be increased within the parks. We've seen prices go up all across the resorts, both internationally and domestically. And we're so kind of far removed from, I don't know, March of 2020. Is it now time that we kind of start to say something here? Look, I do agree with you, George. I don't go out seeking these things, but at a certain point, I mean, you are paying for a high quality premium product.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. And something like this is something that does need to be addressed. And I feel like Disney is in a place where they don't necessarily do anything where they may recognize it themselves, but it's almost like they wait for us to call them up, because if nobody does, and it's like, well, we're collecting everybody's money, so we might as well just let it be. We don't have to put no effort onto it. But when you have multiple sources that showcase this, and I think if you do it by this manner, then Disney will say, hey, you know what? Now we're going to start getting some flack for this, because then the very next day, someone posted a photo of It's a Small World boats, and lo and behold, they were like brand spanking new, very shiny.
Yeah, but here's the thing with that, though. And here's the thing, and I was actually going to bring this up, because this actually happened a few years ago, actually before the pandy, right? I'm not going to say which outlet, okay? It may or may not be WDWNT. Wink, wink. but there was a downtown Disney sign in the Esplanade in between DCA and Disneyland, right?
Sure.
There used to be a downtown Disney sign, and there was some reporting from some outlet. Oh my God! Look at these bulbs, light bulbs are all burnt out on this sign, right? And they put the report up, and then like a day or two later, this whole thing was gone, right? And so this is kind of the problem on this sort of like watchdog reporting, because the people that like WDWNT or any outlet, Mouse Info, whoever, Mike's Chat, they're not privy to what's really going on, and so they don't know there was a work order to remove that sign. All they see is that, well, the bulbs were burned out. Well, they're not going to replace bulbs on a thing they're going to remove on Wednesday, and you're not privy to that as a fan. So, and even with some of these things, right? It's like, okay, the boats are dirty, right? And then it's like a few days later, now they're clean. Well, it's like, how do you know that the attention to it is what brought them to clean it, and it wasn't just there was a work order that hasn't been acted on yet, and there's a little bit of that. I don't know if like it's so much as like, well, so and so website reported on it, and that's why Disney had to hurry up and get it done, or if it's just, well, there's a work order and it's for Tuesday, and X, Y, and Z website reported it like the previous Monday. It's like, look, you could scream at the sky all day long for the sun to rise. Eventually it will rise, but it doesn't mean that your screaming made it rise, is what I'm trying to say here.
Well, that's just like the one photo. It's where the camera's pointing down in like the downward angle, and it's showing like this little scuff mark on. It's like, now something like that. I don't know. I don't know if it's on that page, but it was showing. Yeah, that one, and it was again. Like, I'm not purposely, as I said, some of these things I still think were bad for Disney to even let go completely. But that's what I'm saying. I'm personally not going to go there and wait hours in line for a ride to be looking for stuff like this.
Yeah.
It's like, if I'm going to be on a ride, my eyes are focused on what I am doing in the moment. And that's the whole point of Disney. And this is where, going back to our previous conversation, it's almost like people are just using Disney to just try to get their own clicks to say, how much of can you be disgusted with Disney? Like, what did they do now that's so bad that you can just put another hitch into their coffin, so to speak.
Yeah, and these are physical places. There's going to be wear and tear, you guys. I mean, if you ever looked at old pictures of Disneyland when Walt Disney was alive, you would see scratches and marks and, so yeah, but there is a line, like some of those boats looked really bad. I mean, there's no excusing that. Like this to me, I got to be
That's
real.
what I'm saying. This, I wouldn't even
that bad.
And looked at that now.
I mean, come on, Yeah, but Jay, what are your thoughts on this, man? What are your feelings on the maintenance? Is it kind of like, are you kind of in the middle with it? Do you kind of think it's like just way overboard or?
Well, so here's the thing. I do think that this kind of reporting can be ridiculous. However, Disney does differentiate itself from other parks experiences by having superior quality and superior. The reason Walt was always about like you're never going to see a piece of trash, and the reason for that was so that you didn't get taken out of the fact that you were in Disneyland. He didn't want you to feel like you were in another theme park that maybe didn't care as much about that activity. Here's where I think it gets real wild though, and I realize that I'm going a couple different directions here.
Sure.
I don't think this would have happened. I don't think anybody wants to hear this, by the way, but I don't think this would have happened under Chapek. When Chapek was in charge of the parks, we didn't see a lot of this stuff coming up. It came up every once in a while. Somebody would come up with a thing. But I think when you've got leadership transitions, when you've got new people in new roles who are maybe not used to those roles as much, you do tend to see sort of some lapses in some areas. Chapek's biggest problem was that he got into some areas that he didn't have experience with in regards to streaming, in regards to some of the content creation in the studios. But one of the things that Chapek knew, and being a data guy, he would know this. Chapek's going to ask the question. Go back to the earlier statement you made about Small World and the Imagineer who said, I was getting death threats. Here's the thing. This is something that you guys talk about all the time. Your behavior will dictate what Disney does. And Chapek was really big on that, right? Did people stop writing Small World because they added some IP? No, they kept writing Small World and the IP stayed in there. So I think it's one of those things where if you've got leadership transitions, if you've got new people in new roles, by the way, they still are struggling to fill some more frontline roles.
Lots of
those things are good. Yeah. So that's going to be difficult. That's going to be really, I think there's two points I'm trying to make. One, we may be railing on the wrong people when we get mad, right? Absolutely. You guys spend a lot of time talking about that. Two, we need to give a certain level of grace to the things that we want to support and we want to love and want to keep going. So just like George said, I don't go to the parks looking for, I remember different experiences I've had in the parks where I thought to myself, wow, there's way more trash on the ground than normal. And that did take me out of it a little bit. Mm-hmm. But guess what? It didn't all of a sudden make me go, I'm going to Magic Mountain tomorrow. Because guess what? I would have seen on the ground at Magic Mountain twice as much trash, So I think there's a little bit here that is that I get where people are going with it. I think that they're trying to send a good message, but it can bring us down a little bit because it can be a little bit too negative and a little bit too like you're looking for a needle in a haystack just so you can complain.
Right. It's a little nitpicky sometimes. I think
Jay, what you're saying is when Disney let go of Chapek and essentially they let go of Mr. Clean.
Yes.
That's
exactly it.
We brought it.
I love it. Good. That's pretty good. Not bad.
That's exactly it. Yeah. No, it's interesting. It's very, very interesting. And look, I mean, like you said, Jay, it's important for these parks to stay clean. Disney kind of did set the standard for themselves almost with that. They from the beginning, Walt said, I want these places to be clean. So it's weird. I kind of have like I'm very forgiving for a lot of stuff that like, if I see like the bottom of a trash can, there's like a little scrape on the bottom. I'm not going to sit there and go, oh my God, they didn't fix that yet. There are most things that a lot of super fans kind of point out. I don't know. It doesn't really bother me, right? But there are things that are like, wow, like really egregious stuff. Like I think the boats looked really bad that we were showing a minute ago. Those Small World boats looked really bad, right? So I think there is a line, and everyone has a different line, I guess, right? But it's a balancing act because you kind of take these grievances to Disney as a fan or as a community, and it can kind of look a little like it can kind of look a little petty and nitpicky from Disney's perspective. Like you're calling us out on a light bulb or something like that. And then that kind of nicks away a little bit at the overall community's kind of like, like credibility in terms of the eyes of Disney, right? Because they don't really take it too seriously. These people complain about everything. If there's a light bulb burnt out, we can't replace it fast enough, right? And that takes away from when there is a big problem, we complain about it, because now they've already got this mindset of like, oh, geez, these people complain about everything. And now when there's actually something actually falling apart that actually needs addressing, they've completely like toned us out.
But one thing that actually did kind of gripe me just a little bit, it just hit my nerve switch just a little bit, is when Expedition Everest was done for that lengthy refurbishment where they didn't have a reopening date and then it got pushed back again. And that was during the time when we were going in, I believe it was in June. And just as the attraction reopened was when our trip was coming around the corner. And I realized that every time when you reach to the top of the mountain to be able to go backwards, they have a lot of people are notorious for flinging their scrunchies and their hair bands. Yep. Well, the attraction was done for more than 6 months and not one hairband was removed from that. It was left. So to me, would it hinder my experience of that attraction? No, I still loved it, but it just kind of gave me a slight gripe to say, you know what, you had this attraction done for more than 6 months.
Here's my thing. Disney prices itself as a premium product. They even tell you that. It's like, hey, you know what? We're the priciest place in town. We're the best place in town, right? We offer a superior product when compared to our competitors. It's like, okay, well, sure, that is true in many respects. And one of the things, like you said, Jay, that they did pride themselves on, and they did revolutionize the industry in including what's cleanliness, right? A prioritization on that. And so when I see, look, obviously, I come at it from kind of a dual perspective, right? I understand the operations perspective where it's like, hey, look, we're short staffed, we're getting cuts, people aren't coming in as regularly as as we need them to be coming in. We have other priorities in some different areas and so forth. Like, I get it. The monorail, look, that was refurbished. It came back from refurbishment in October of 2019. I would have thought that those things would have held on a little bit longer, but look, listen, a lot of things have happened since the pandemic, right? And Disney was dealing with short staff for a long, long time here, and reduced budgets as everything was just taken and just slumped over to streaming. That's kind of why I really had some disagreements with JPEG strategy, because the parks were really starting to suffer because of that. Okay, but from a guest's perspective who is paying more than ever to go into these parks, there is no discount for the lack of cleanliness that they actually offer, right? There is no reduction in price. Hey, you know what? You're not going to be getting the premium experience that we promised, but here's a little percentage off. No, it was no. We're gonna raise prices more. We're gonna charge more. We're going to, increase the costs of going more. And so, when you do that, it places enhanced emphasis on things that may not be up to snuff, right? That people go, well, you know what? When I was paying this much, I wouldn't have cared. Now I care.
But do you think they really cared, though? Like, honestly, if they lowered the prices tomorrow, do you think fans would just stop complaining? Well, now prices are low. It's free, and I don't care.
I mean, I think the fans know. But I think guests have definitely started to notice these things. I know people that I've gone with, casually are kind of like, ooh, what? that's kind of a bad look there. And I'm like, oh yeah, that is a bad look there. What is going on here? You know?
And yet Disney is now leaning more towards for the day guests over
Sure.
annual pass holders or Magic Keys. So
Right.
if it makes me wonder that if they're trying to get even more into their good graces, then they should have the upkeep a little bit more. Then, I mean, they're trying to appease all, but I'm saying like Disney is leaning more towards for just regular ticket holders than Magic Keys and annual pass holders. So if that's the case, why is Disney still in that mindset to say, well, they're paying the money anyway, so why should we not, I don't want to say not care, but put in that extra oomph for...
And George, I think they've been in that mindset. It's like, hey, people are coming anyway. You know, we got bigger fish to fry. We're moving on here. And I think that's a bad mentality to be in. We'll say, OG, with the light bulb example that you bring out for this with the sign between DCA and Disneyland and the Esplanade. That sign was moved, interestingly enough, from that area to I believe it's now at Toy Story parking lot. Interestingly enough, so yes, they probably weren't going to maintain a sign that was going to be moved anyway, and probably going to be rehabbed in the process, right? But
Right.
It needed lights for the walking path.
You need lights for the walking path, right? For this though, like it's a Small World boats here. They shouldn't have to be shamed into doing it. Now, look, I don't. That suggests that WDW News Today or presupposes
like the catalyst.
that that were the catalyst for that. I think they were. These have been left this way for quite a while, much longer than they should have been, and they shouldn't. They shouldn't be shamed into doing that kind of stuff. I mean, that's just it's just bad show. Now, if you take a look at this on the screen here, this kind of what is it? Kind of, I guess, Tinker Toy kind of large scale prop or whatever.
That looks familiar to me because I remember it looking like that. That's the one that that's the one that distinctly stands out to me the most.
You're by walkways that are pressure washed every night. Every night, Disney pressure washes their attraction walkways in order to keep them looking fresh, looking clean, all that kind of stuff. I mean, can we not take that same pressure washer 2 minutes and do this right here to this? It's just these fixes. I understand there's a process to it, and it's more complicated than I might make it seem in my oversimplification. However, it doesn't need to be that complicated either. It doesn't need to be that. I guess it's not. I don't think it's that hard, especially with how much they're charging now, to address some of these things before they become issues.
Do you think, Dre, that and not to kind of down the cast members, but because of the situation that Disney was in, that they kind of had to fill those cast member roles, that they may have not schooled these people on the Disney way, so to speak, or the Disney attributes, so to speak. So they just kind of got thrown into a position to say, you know what, I'm just kind of, I hate to say this, like here for a paycheck. And then it's like, do my thing, do what I was told, and then leave rather than go that extra mile.
This is a controversial thing, George, because I know we're going to get killed in the comments. Someone's going to say, oh, the cast members are amazing. They're great. They're awesome. They're never wrong. There has been a little bit of lackadaisicalness that has kind of been added to the equation that didn't previously exist, George, to your point. And so there could be a little bit, and this, I mean, I don't even reserve this just to the frontline cast members. I also extend this out to managers and so forth, where it's like
more so, I believe, and actually OG mentioned it.
Yeah,
how many times? Like management,
exactly. A little bit higher. It's like we don't need to schedule a washing of these boats on such a cycle. We can go a little bit extended, right? Or well, we don't really have to dedicate somebody to this job. Let's go ahead and just add this into the routine of somebody else's position and so forth. This kind of yield management strategy that we've been hearing about. I do think this is kind of a consequence from this in some way, George. To your point.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and this whole notion of like, the cast members are like perfect. And look, if you're a cast member and you're watching this, some of your fellow cast members don't pull their weight. Okay, and I'm sure cast members complain about so and so over there at the hot dog stand or whatever. Oh man, that person's lazy, right? Every job has that. Every job has that. I have that at my job, right? And so it's just when content creators get out there, or people on social media, Twitter, whatever, and they just like this blanket, like the cast members are perfect, and it's just all these external forces are the problem. Come on. It just seems a little disingenuous, in my opinion. Like, we can acknowledge there are some cast members that don't pull their weight. Then there's a ton of them that do. There's a ton of them that provide really amazing experiences for people. I've come in contact with a lot of amazing cast members, especially on the Disney Cruise Line. Out of control, customer service, really, really good stuff. But anyone who tells you that all the cast members are perfect and it's just not true, and they're lying.
Go suck a lemon.
It's
Yeah,
not.
exactly.
And I will say to go back to our previous conversation a little bit about fans and so forth, right? And channeling their aggression. I think harping on this stuff, because sometimes it can get a little bit like, okay, come on. This is
Totally,
ridiculous,
yeah.
right? But at least with the most egregious examples, I'll limit it to that.
Yeah.
I think it is pretty constructive, and I think it's something like that is just universal, right? Like, let's be honest, some of the refurbs that we've been hearing about, or some of the overlays that we've been hearing about, aren't universal in the slightest in terms of their reception, right? But cleanliness, I think everybody can kind of rally around, and honestly, too, in the news, you're hearing about some viruses going around, right? And cleanliness is starting to become a little bit more of an top of mind, right? I think it's also in the company's best interest to kind of prioritize this a little bit more. And I think the fans, look, in terms of the outlet of their emotions, right? A lot of it's non-constructive. In this way, I do think it was constructive and beneficial for the company, and I think they really did do something about it. And credit to them for doing that.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think too, like WDWNT tends to be a fairly equitable critiquer. Like, he says positive things, he says negative things. Tom specifically. One of the things I wanted to bring up really quickly, because I thought this was very interesting. I was listening to an older podcast from Diz Unplugged, and Pete Werner, who I know you guys are a fan of, who I got to meet one time, by the way.
That's cool.
Back in the day. Yeah, he's very, very cool guy. They were talking about the strike that might happen, right? Because Disney World employees might go on strike because Disney World employees are looking for more money.
Correct.
And one of the other people on the panel was kind of like, oh, why can't Disney just pay them? And Pete correctly stopped and said, well, wait a minute, you're already complaining about the price increases. You're complaining about the price increases. We got over here, they're asking for raises. Like, where does it all? It's a business. What happens here? So I think in bringing this topic up, one of the things that you've all pointed out really well is that it's not acceptable for Disney to have this level of disrepair, right? Like, that's not acceptable. The question is, and from the fans, I think especially, is where are we going to put the blame and where do we take it, right? Like, so how far does this go? Because if this was 3 months ago and we got these same pictures, what would it have been? JPEG can't keep the parks clean, right? Like, yeah, it would have been like, okay, we're blaming a person who's probably so far away from the maintenance level at the parks.
Oh, yeah.
That you got to be kidding me. So there are all these factors at play that we need to consider. Are we going to complain about the prices increasing, and we're going to say that the cast members need to get 15 whatever an hour, 20 an hour? Like this is a complex issue, and Disney has historically been so good at navigating these waters that it's just weird for us to see them slip a little bit, because we haven't seen them slip since probably since Frank Wells passed away. You know what I mean? I mean, besides the Chapek stuff, this is the newest round of this, like, ooh, Disney's slipping. And I do think that leaves a bad taste in your mouth when you see the price increases and when you see some of this other stuff. So I totally get it. But it's a more complex issue than work harder, right? Like, you know.
And Jay, you make a great point about the conflict of priorities, right? Where it's like, we talk about it all the time, OG. We want to pay less. We want all the access that we can get to the parks, right?
No crowds when we get there, and a
No
$1 billion
crowds,
ticket every year.
right?
And,
Yeah, exactly. I bring up the example of the triangle, right? Price, attendance, and I think the other one was access, right? You can't have all three. You can only have two. So which one are you gonna pick, right? You do have some conflict there in terms of priorities, and I think that's a great point. Pete Warner, give it up to him, because it's like that does definitely play into it. I think you're right too. Who do we actually blame? Who do we actually like? OG, you've seen me in the DMs. I blame Kenny P quite a bit for some of the issues that are actually happening at Disneyland Resort. I think some of these Walt Disney World managers, I mean, look, and maybe it's there's a conflict between Josh Giamaro and the budgets and so forth. Walt Disney World managers, step up. You got to get some budgets here. If that is the issue, these things have to be rectified.
I've got a solution for us, guys.
Sure.
If you want to, we will do away with reservations for the guests who are willing to put in 2 hours worth of cleaning.
I like skin in the game.
Skin in the game.
Those sleeves. That's great.
I like it.
That's great. No, and this is the thing too, and this is one of my big things with Daddy Josh, right? Tomorrow is like, okay, so we have this guy who everyone can agree. Josh seems like a great guy on a personal level. Seems like a really, really nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the issue with Daddy Josh is that he's in the parks all the time. He's taking selfies with everyone and he's smoozing, right? Fantastic. There's nothing wrong with that. In a vacuum, that's great. But if the smoozing and the boots on the ground and noticing stuff with his own eyes never translates to any improvements, tangible improvements in the park, then basically all the smoozing and being in the parks amounts to basically just playtime for Josh, right? Socializing, hanging out with the homies. Basically, it means nothing if he doesn't actually take that and do something with it, and it doesn't seem like he is, and that's what's very, very frustrating. And actually, to bring up Pete from the Diz again, he's as much as he is friends with Demaro and he knows him, he's complained about that a few times.
He put him in his place on the air a couple times.
A few times.
Which we have never really heard before, right? And then now it's like, okay, well, now that Chapek's moved out, now it's here we go. We gotta find somebody to blame now. And honestly, I think that blame is going in a better direction.
And actually, to sticking on Pete Werner, I actually just watched their recent video about him talking about Bob Iger sending out the emails.
Oh, okay.
And he had mentioned, and he actually looked directly into the camera, and he said, I always thought, that we didn't, as a Disney community, we didn't have the influence on the top leadership. And he looked right into the camera and he said, if an email is all that we get after all that was said and done, you got to do something else, Bob.
Oh, really?
And he addressed it to Iger.
Wow. So there are gonna be some fingers here being pointed, because now that the big bag Chapek is gone, now who do we blame? Who gets the next slice and dice?
Well, and it goes to what Jay said earlier when we were talking in the other segment about rooting for failure. Fans need a team, and when you take away the villain of the story, there's a vacuum now, right? You got to find a new villain. Who's going to be the villain? They should do a D+ show on that. Make it a reality show. Let's pick the next Disney villain.
Well, if the villain was a football team, it'd be the Eagles. So I'll just leave it at that.
George. The Pittsburgh Philadelphia divide. We talked about that. That's a pretty good one. I like that.
I know, fellas, that went right over my head.
Yeah. Well, there we go. I want to bring this up quickly, though. Since we were talking about this, and I don't know, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but we talked about what is it? Rock and Roller Coaster getting refurbed, right? And now the speculation is, well, is this a refurb or a re-theme based on some of the stuff actually coming out against Steven Tyler? And we don't have to get into that, and we won't make assumptions there. But if that Park Place, WW Pro's site, had this to say on it, he has some insiders who are telling him that they are kind of pivoting away maybe from Aerosmith being incorporated in the attraction. We've actually seen some merchandise, Aerosmith Loungefly backpacks, for example, that have been sold at like Animal Kingdom. And it seems like, oh, why are you trying to get rid of product like this? This is very interesting. So we have a big refurbishment coming. We're hearing that maybe Aerosmith is taken out of the attraction. 2 questions, just real fast.
Yeah.
1, do you think this is likely? And 2, who would be your choice as a temporary replacement before finding a better theme for this attraction going forward?
I think it's definitely possible. I think they've been kind of shot. I think they've been kind of kicking the tires on this idea for a little while. I think I can definitely see Disney wanting to maybe retheme this and even get away from music. Maybe retheme it to something totally different. Maybe some kind of Disney IP they can put in here. Now, personally, if it is music, I've never been a rock fan. I'd rather have like the Rock, Jay-Z coaster or something, right? No, I'm more of a no, I'm just kidding. But I don't know who I would pick. I'm not a rock fan, so I don't know who would be a good choice. But the problem with picking rock people to theme your coaster at a family park is that you just don't know. Look, these guys and gals, I mean, sometimes they're not, they're not
80s?
saints here, right?
Oh, man. I mean, there was some stuff going on there. Look at any Guns N' Roses documentary, you'll know what I'm talking about there.
Well,
what
let
do you think, George?
me say this, that I think if they were to retheme it, if this is the case, because of the allegation or possible allegations against Steven Tyler, that they would do something temporarily with the music, because you still have the electric guitar out in the front. You have all the cueing based off of like Hollywood G-Force records and what have you. They have the recording studio, which they may cut out the Aerosmith dialogue and everything with the band itself before you enter in through the alley where you board onto the ride vehicle. So they may just keep it as like a music studio with it not proclaiming to anybody, and they may just alter each ride that it could be a different rock band.
Song choices.
Yeah, just temporarily. And then I think, as Disney is heavily on IP, that it'll eventually become something other than music. But
so no Jay-Z.
I don't think no Jay-Z. No, sorry, OG. Sorry, OG to the Jay-Z. But I don't know if any of you fellas know. Does it say when the contract was up for?
Yeah,
Aerosmith?
So interesting, because that Park Place actually makes reference to it. When the story was first forwarded to me that they might be looking into this, it was like, well, I don't know. I mean, they do have a contractual obligation with the band and so forth. They had to get out of that. Apparently, there is a clause in which Disney could exercise that would allow them to get out of this contract before the end date, which I guess was 2028, according to that Park Place themselves. So this was going to go on for quite a while here. But because there is a kind of an impropriety clause that they can exercise, maybe they get out early. It's a really kind of interesting discussion. I have my pick here, and I thought it was a really good idea when I heard it. But Jay, go ahead. Your thoughts? Maybe a band.
Well, the only thought I'll say, and I wanted you to go first on your thought, because the one thing I wanted to say was, what a horrible contract. 2028. This ride was built in the 90s, right?
99.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
What
think
band is going to be popular? I mean, okay, so yes, Aerosmith is a good choice of the bands available, but come on, like how old is Steven Tyler going to be by 2028?
To be fair, I think it was extended multiple times, which is why it's that I think that's why. Look,
I mean, to be fair, the guy's already 110, so I mean, it can't be.
No, I remember hearing discussions about them going with the Jonas Brothers for a while, right? It was a band that they were doing a lot of music with already. It was a very popular band. It was like, okay, well, we can switch this out, but those things kind of fell through. Look, Aerosmith being the theme of this attraction, that's been on the chopping block for a long time. And now it's like, okay, well, can we get out of this, cleanly right now, cut the cord, and then, like you said, George, at a time when we can theme it to IP, let's do so.
Because it was supposed to for quite some time because of the Monsters Inc. thing. That was what it was supposed to become.
Monsters Inc. Yep. And there was multiple ideas, but at least temporarily, right? With this kind of area in which you want to theme it for something right now, remove Aerosmith from it. I believe it was Jonas on WW Pro's YouTube channel that had the suggestion. What about Queen? And I was like, wow, that is actually a pretty good pick for a couple of reasons. One, Queen, worked hand in hand with Searchlight Pictures, who did Bohemian Rhapsody recently, which was acquired by Disney as part of the Fox acquisition. You could very easily call up some of those guys who worked out those deals, get in touch with the band, the existing bandmates, and maybe do a deal there. Also, too, Queen, the members that maybe could have some impropriety, right? Well, they're no longer with us right now. So, you don't have to necessarily worry about certain bandmates getting in trouble because that there's no risk of that. Right? And so it's like, okay, well, that could be a thing there that could work, that could slot in pretty well, that I thought was kind of interesting. What do you guys think about that?
That is interesting. And I actually think that they might go, like you talked about, Dre, like the possibility of like Jonas Brothers. Mm-hmm. Disney has some properties, and I'm not going to be shy about it. I will admit it full straight up. I will admit it. I actually really did enjoy the High School Musical, the series on Disney Plus. I did.
Sure.
I went into it season 1, just kind of like watching it just because Disney Plus was a new platform and I wanted to do a review on the channel. Didn't think I would like it. Didn't even like the old movies. I watched it and I actually really, really liked it. So maybe they'll go that route. Maybe they'll do like the whole High School Musical thing. It keeps it within their own brand, but I don't know. Maybe I'm too emotional.
Maybe you are, good sir. Maybe you are.
I did see somebody, by the way. I did see somebody suggest, and I wish I could give them credit because I don't know who it was, but suggest that you could bring in the Muppets band. And have them take
Electric
over.
Mayhem.
Would be cool.
There
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
That would be cool.
That would be a really good, because you could easily port it in. You already own the IP. It's easy
Right.
to do. So yeah.
Imagineering, if you're
I
watching
think-
this, that's the game plan. Do it.
Yeah, that's something. I had not heard that. That's good.
Yeah, I saw it on Twitter, and I wish I could attribute it to somebody, but I don't remember who it was that brought it up.
Very cool. Very
All right.
cool.
Well, let's pivot now. We're gonna get into some movies. I mean, we're only a few days into 2023, right? And who's gonna win? Now, first of all, I think it was just the other day. It was reported that Disney kind of led the pack for, what was it, 2022, right?
Yes, yeah.
Right, in terms of overall box office,
I think,
right?
almost $5 billion. Easily out ahead of everybody else. Yeah, I mean, they were number ones for sure.
They were number 1, right? So going into 2023, who's going to come out on top? Now I know we're a little early, we don't know, but that's the fun of it, right? We're gonna kind of guesstimate, and there's a lot of kind of interesting wild cards here. So I'm gonna go ahead, Dre. You have a chart here.
Hopefully you guys can see this on the preview window. If you can't, I did send in the DMs. If you wanted to look at the image on the devices and so forth, you can. That way you can get a really kind of good look at it. If people are watching this at home, you probably can't see it. Hopefully you can. but it was hard to come up with something that demonstrated all of it, without having it be a mess. So this is kind of what I came up with here. Obviously, this is separated in 3 distinct studios. Right, we have Warner Bros. Discovery in the first column, NBC Universal in the second column, and the Walt Disney Company in the third column. And this includes their kind of subsidiaries. So you have, let's say, DreamWorks and Illumination. That's also included in the Universal slot there. And obviously the mini studios that release films under Buena Vista Distribution in their column as well. So I think it's pretty representative of what we're going to get here. Some things are still kind of being slotted around, but this is it, the 2023 slate here from these big studios. And the question is, who's going to come out on top?
Yeah, Jay, I'll start with you. What are your predictions? Who's coming out on top?
This is a tough one. There's a lot of big blockbuster films coming out this year, a lot more than we had in 2022.
Yes.
Some of them are more controversial. We've got three DC films, which don't matter because they're not even going to have anything to play with in the future. We got James Gunn doing totally different stuff. So this is going to be an interesting year. So here's how I would break it down. It seems to me on paper, Disney is going to do really well again. I know that some of these films already have some negative publicity, at least on YouTube, stacked into them. For example, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Right.
However, the Indiana Jones IP has not taken as big of a hit yet as some of the other IPs. So you're still going to show up with a ticket, right? Unless you hear from your friends, like when the reviews actually come out and people are like, wow, it's really, 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 truly awful. But I have a feeling that let's just say some reports have been out there that, for example, they've had to reshoot endings and things like that, right?
Right.
Let's just say that's true. I don't think that Disney is going to accept the idea that Harrison Ford's legacy, because keep in mind, this is his legacy for Star Wars and Indiana Jones, because he's not doing anything Star Wars anymore.
Correct.
They're not going to let that go to waste. They're not going to put themselves in a place to embarrass somebody like him. So I think that movie will come out being at least decent. In the final edit, I think it'll be at least decent, if not better. I think it's going to score really big. I also think Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is going to go off the charts high. So I think that those two from Disney are going to be huge. The ones that I'm not as sure about Little Mermaid. I'm one of those people that feels like the live action remakes are sort of money grabs as opposed to truly creative things that need to be done. I'm not against them. If you like them, that's fantastic. I just don't see the need for them as much. So, but I think that Disney's got a stack of movies here. I think Quantumania, all reports are that Quantumania is going to be more impactful to the MCU as a whole than the other Ant-Man films have been. That's coming out of the John Campea crew, that it's going to be a much bigger kind of tent pole of a film than you might have otherwise imagined. So I think Disney's looking pretty strong. Here's where it gets weird. I don't know how WB is going to do with those. I've heard, again, this is coming from the John Campea show, that The Flash is a great film, but it's got Ezra Miller in it, and it doesn't matter to the larger play. So I don't know how that's going to go. I think Shazam's going to be great because the first Shazam was great. The first Aquaman is really good, so those two might perform well. But again, if Aquaman's not coming out till December 26th, we're going to know what James Gunn's plan is before that time. Yeah. Is that going to put a damper on if they announce, hey, we have Jason Momoa coming back, but guess what? He's not Aquaman anymore. He's Lobo. Well, how is that going to affect that film? It's going to be very odd, right?
Well, that's what makes the DC stuff is really interesting right now. And that kind of goes along with the Marvel stuff, because you got Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which we'll get into in a second. But with DC stuff, it's like you have a core audience there who I think when they know that their investment is going to be rewarded, right? That I'm going to get on the ride and that we're going someplace, I think they're in. Yes. Once you say, hey, these films don't matter anymore, I think a lot of that core audience goes, I'll wait for it on streaming. So I think that might really, and that's kind of a shame too, because I agree with you, Jay. I heard that The Flash is actually a pretty good movie. That people who have seen it, I've heard kind of a rough story outline of what it is. It could be really, really good. But it's got Ezra, and it's got, it's part of a franchise that may not matter as much anymore with this kind of reboot that James Gunn has been kind of forwarding. So that's always kind of a thing here. When it comes to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, I think for the kind of associated reasons, that might be like way up there because, well, the Christmas special did really, really well. I think that re-energized a lot of people around Guardians of the Galaxy going like, okay, like I'm really excited for the next one. And it's going to be his kind of last film with Marvel. And I think a lot of people kind of want to jump into that and go, hey, I want to ride it out with these characters and with this this kind of creative vision for these characters that I love so much. So I think people are going to jump on board there. So that's a really kind of interesting thing. I'll let you guys go for, because I have thoughts on all of this kind of stuff. But George, what do you think?
Well, I think as far as for the Walt Disney Company goes, I've seen a lot of trailers. I've seen a lot of sneak peeks when I was out at the D23 Expo before it actually got aired to the public, and actually some of the films that have not yet even been shown to the public yet.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, I do agree with Jay. I think Indiana Jones, kind of already had set itself up to be decent. I think Guardians 3, even though I wasn't a huge fan of the trailer, I'm still going to go see this and go see it anyway, because I was a huge fan, particularly with the first Guardians. And I think it's just more so of the character study of the Guardians themselves rather than the storyline that kind of drew me to those films. So I'm definitely still going to see it. I do feel like, am I going to probably see The Little Mermaid? Yes. I don't necessarily know if I'm going to go see it in theaters, but it's more so just out of curiosity. I think it's one of those films that I think it overstayed its welcome as far as taking the animated films into live action. I think it worked well with Beauty and the Beast. It worked well with The Jungle Book. I just think now, just to kind of utilize all the animated films to make them live action, it's cutting off the creativity side of the company than to create original content.
People figured out the game too. It's like, okay, well, so they look at it differently.
I'm gonna say something a little controversial, and I'm gonna explain myself, so I don't want any like misconceptions here. But The Little Mermaid, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. Number one, I'm with you guys. Like, I don't like these live action remakes, right? I think it's kind of like they're total cash grabs, and it's lazy. What I also think is lazy is taking a franchise, right, and just kind of race swapping. I think that's also lazy. It's lazy on lazy in this particular circumstance. Now, I think that representation is important, and I think that the better way to sort of have representation is through original stories. So Encanto, Coco, Black Panther, right?
Yeah,
I think that's a better approach to representation than just, okay, we're just going to make this movie. We're going to remake this movie, but we're just make the cast, insert race here. In my opinion, I think that's a lazy approach on top of already a lazy concept of remaking the movie in the first place. Now, I'm rooting for the movie because I love Halle Bailey. I'm a huge fan of her. I think a young lady has an incredible voice, and I don't know. I think she's phenomenal. I want the movie to do very well. I don't know. I'm iffy on that. That's definitely a wild card. That I could see it doing very well, but at the same time, I can also see it underperforming. I really don't know where that one's going to fall. Indiana Jones, I agree with you, Jay, 100%. I think that it will definitely have at least a banger opening weekend. And I do agree with you. I think it's at the very minimum will be decent. I think that movie is going to perform really, really well overall. Obviously, the caveat is if, like you said, like if people come out of it going, oh my God, it's horrible, then maybe not. But I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't. Ant-Man, we'll see. The other two were modest successes. None of these Ant-Man movies so far have been like buco major hits. But like you said, Jay, this one might have a little bit more relevance to the overall MCU. That might bring a lot more people in. Guardians 3 is going to be an absolute monster of a hit. In terms of Universal, they have a couple good movies on their slate. They got the Fast and Furious sequel with like number 10 now or something.
Yeah, that's very sad.
Yeah, I think that movie's going to make a lot of money. I think it'll get Universal, in terms of the overall dollar amount, right, for the end of the year. It'll get to put them on the map. I don't know if that movie in particular will break a profit, though. And there's a little difference there.
We've heard the budget is insane for that movie.
But
so
what I find kind of interesting when I was going through the roster of the films that, as far as I know, the only animated film I'm seeing coming out from the Walt Disney Company is Wish.
And Elemental from Pixar.
Oh, and Elemental from Pixar. Okay, so those
See,
two.
I was gonna comment on Elemental because it. Well, go ahead, George. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and I don't know if you fellas share my same thoughts. Now, I do feel like those films will do well, but now looking at Universal's with Trolls 3 and Super Mario, you have two films that people can already relate to with the Super Mario franchise, and then you have Trolls 3, which already had two very successful films to back that up. When you're kind of versing it to these two newbie films that may not be as a strong competitor.
And also, if you look at Elemental, it comes out June 16th, same day as The Flash, and then you have Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny coming out like 2 weeks after. So that's going to have a particularly hard time, I think. Go ahead, OG, sorry.
No, well, Wish I think has a lot of potential because typically Disney fairy tales, which this is like the quintessential fairy tale kind of movie. It's all about the wishing star and all that stuff with music in it and all that. Typically, those kind of Disney animated movies perform really, really well at the box office. Frozen, Tangled, the Renaissance.
And I do agree with you, OG, because I did see a lot of early concept art for Wish at the expo. But when you tie it to Trolls 3 and Super Mario, would you say that would be, it's going to be successful in its own right, but tying it to those films, do you think it would be more successful than either one of those?
I think it has a real good chance of topping Trolls. Yeah. The thing with Mario though, I was telling Dre today earlier on the phone, Super Mario is $1 billion movie. The hype behind that thing is out of control right now. It looks really, really funny. That movie is going to perform very, very well. And actually, if we're talking like for the year, I think Universal's slate between Fast and Furious and the Mario movie, I think it because look, we talked about the problems with DC, right? Yeah. They're banking on all these DC properties, but they're rebooting it in the middle of all this. So there's who cares about their slate really at that point, right? It's all irrelevant. So I think Universal, and usually Universal's very, in my opinion, very weak with their studio game. They're better at theme parks. Their studio stuff, not as much. But I think in this case, I think Universal has a very good chance at possibly topping WB because that Mario movie, the Fast X movie, I don't know.
Don't forget Oppenheimer.
And Oppenheimer.
This is one I didn't. I heard that Christopher Nolan was walking away from Warner Brothers because of their decision to put out their 2021 slate on streaming. And he's definitely a theater guy, let's say. I did not know before I saw the trailer for Oppenheimer that he had partnered up with Universal. That I did not know about. I was actually pretty stunned by it. I was like, ooh, that's very, very interesting. Because for me, I'm a Christopher Nolan fan. I mean, if he comes out of the film, I'm there. It's not even, I don't need to hear anything about the plot, I don't need to hear anything about the story or whatever. He comes out with the film, I'm there. Kind of like Quentin Tarantino, but that's just me. So I know people who are already going to that already. Like that is on their 2023 slate for sure. Right. I think I echo a lot of your sentiments, OG, about Super Mario Bros. Movie. I think that is going to be an absolute hit. George, you bring a good point about Trolls 3. I think that's an absolute hit as well. And I think between those two, I think this is the year for Universal in the animation game, superseding Disney just because of their kind of comparatively weaker films, and they got some hurdles here.
Yeah, no, they absolutely do. Go ahead, Jay.
I was just saying, Oppenheimer is definitely, of all the films on this list, Oppenheimer and Indiana Jones are my top two picks that I want to go to. Right. Yeah. The one thing that's making this prediction almost impossible is what we saw in 2022 in terms of what moviegoers went to see. Because ordinarily you could bank on groups of teenagers showing up at theaters and going to the latest big budget blockbuster release.
Families.
But yeah, families showing up to animated films.
Right.
But
you make a good point here.
I think in the pandemic, we saw people go, I like watching movies at home. I don't like it when people are on their phones or chewing their popcorn too loud or doing this or doing that. A lot of people upgraded their television system, their home entertainment systems.
Right.
So the really big question here is, what do people go to theaters for in 2023? It used to be a social thing. It's not so much a social thing anymore. My neighbor across the street, friend of mine, has the best. I would rather watch a movie in his home theater than at most theaters, right?
Wow.
So for example, I'm only showing up to, he's got like a like not studio level, but like high level projection with a giant wall screen. And so I look at these films and I go, I'm going to show up to films. I'm more inclined to show up to films, I should say it that way, that I don't want to be spoiled on.
Yep.
That I know we're going to offer an experience that I can't even get at my friend's house across the street. Or that are, again, these marvels that are like cinematic experiences where even being in a closed off basement with an amazing system isn't quite there yet. So I think it's just going to be, it's one of the most difficult years to predict. Disney has been, phase 4 of Marvel has been disappointing, and I can't be convinced otherwise. You can give me all of the budget. Yeah, you can give me all of the earnings from all the movies, and I go, yeah, but how long can you keep getting those earnings if you keep putting out this content?
Correct.
Right.
Correct. And the inflation with ticket prices and so forth, and kind of dwindling cultural impact and so forth. Like it's all tied in, Jay. You're absolutely right.
It's all tied in. So I'm not as excited about those properties. I love Mangold. I love Indiana Jones. I'm trusting that will be good. I love anything. I'm like you, Vash. I love anything that is put out by Christopher Nolan.
Yep.
The guy literally has no misses. I don't even know of a single miss that he has. It's going to be interesting. I mean, ordinarily I would have told you that the DC that lineup over on the WB, I would have been like, wow, that's a lineup. Except that it may not matter at all. And if Black Adam is any indication, it's not going to be a good outlook for them. So there's a lot. I would like to be more excited about this, and there are some films that I'm very excited about. But man, it is tough to predict what people are going to show up for.
No, 100%. It's really tough. It's really, really tough. You know,
I look at I look at Creed 3. I look at Barbie. We've heard a lot of talk about that for a lot of years now. Dune Part 2 definitely has its audience. OG,
and I am
a
Dune 2 audience guy too, by the way.
Okay, yeah.
Denis Villeneuve is phenomenal. Yeah.
So I think Dune. Okay, that might be a. Hey, I'm going to go to the theater for that experience because that's such a wide scope kind of film, that definitely, I think, benefits from the theater experience. So I could see a little bit of that, like a little bit of the
but it also is a little bit
effect.
It's a little bit too art housey for some people, though.
That's true.
It didn't go skyrocket. The part 1 didn't skyrocket. It
didn't. But it also came out 2021 as well. I think the first one. So I do agree with you, though. It's a little art housey. It's not quite that mainstream. Okay, let's book a ticket right now for a wide segment of the audience. So it'll have to definitely prove itself. Oh, gee, I didn't know about Wonka before you told me. That sounds cool, right? That sounds pretty cool. Color Purple and all that. But yeah, I mean, it takes a hit when you add that DC stuff in there.
Yeah.
It really does. I mean, it's just like, wow, that could have been an easily $5 billion slate right there. But without those 3 films, and we're talking 3, all being released there that don't quite matter, who's going to jump on the Blue Beetle bandwagon? Who's going to be interested in Aquaman, especially? And I'm hearing that Johnny Depp's old wife is going to be included in that film, and that might hurt it as well. Just saying, the Amber Heard stuff there. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think if we go back to the earlier part of our conversation, what's really interesting is that Universal is the only company on this list, on this trifecta of companies. Universal, first of all, is the only one that hasn't changed their logo. And I have a feeling it is because the other 2 companies have a lot of negativity around them. And so Universal's the only one. Like whoever's doing the Universal PR right now, I realize that they're a little bit under the radar. They're trying not to get hit by any bullets, but they're killing it with their PR right now because that slate of films, like you guys mentioned earlier, the Super Mario Brothers movie is getting lauded by people as the buzz
goodwill.
There's
Goodwill there.
Yes, there's goodwill there. The Oppenheimer trailer was mind blowing. Yeah.
Yes.
So there's whatever Universal's doing, it is on a roll. Whereas I think Disney and Warner Brothers, their problems have been like I haven't even heard the Universal CEO's name, but I hear Zazie and I hear Iger and I hear Chapek all the time. So that's not what you want. You want your properties out in front of people, not your leadership,
Right. Or your leadership decision making, and statements and so forth.
Yeah.
Well, Brian Roberts of Universal is a very you can tell he's a very mild mannered kind of guy. Like Iger and Zazie are very much the showmans, right? They're very much like the Hollywood kind of like they're out there at all the premieres and yada yada yada. I don't even know if Brian Roberts has ever been to a movie premiere. I don't remember ever seeing him on the red carpet. This guy. I mean, this is the thing too. I mean, he ran Comcast. I mean, Comcast ended up swallowing Universal up. Right. So this guy was head of a giant telecom company. I mean, he's not exactly like oozing charisma and stuff like that. So because of that, he kind of goes under that radar because he's kind of in the shadows, Whereas Bob Iger, he's on the red carpet, and so is Zazie, and he's out there, and it's just different. It's different.
You know who we have heard from, though, from Universal? A little bit of Jeff Shell. A little bit of, hey, you know what? Disney. What about the animated game? Not looking so good, but ours is looking great. That kind of stuff, which I thought was very interesting.
Here's the thing with Jeff Shell, though, right? Here's the thing with Jeff Shell. Oh, Disney, your animated game isn't looking so hot. Okay, that's like to use a sports analogy, right? That's like some like unknown basketball player talking shit about Jordan because he had a couple off games,
That's true.
I mean, it's like I get it. He's doing his thing. Shell he's a company guy, but Disney all but invented this art form, and really up until just the last couple of releases has been churning out hit after hit after hit after hit after hit. And the pandemic kind of dropped a bomb on all that stuff. And really, in terms of animation, really, aside from Universal's Minion movie, families aren't going to the theaters for animation. They're just not. They're waiting for the streamers.
Yep. They went to Trolls World Tour, didn't they?
Wait, what was the question?
They went to Trolls World Tour, didn't they?
I believe so.
Trolls.
That was a big hit.
Yeah, that was the thing that kind of.
Yeah, World Tour. For Trolls, that's what kind of kicked the streaming.
That's what kicked the streaming.
It was like, I mean, it went like where it exploded. And then that's when everyone else got on the streaming bandwagon because they thought it would be a bigger profit than throw it in the theaters.
AMC was saying that they were going to pull their Universal slate entirely because of some of the comments that came out there and so forth. So it's an interesting point, OG. This is tough.
It's tough.
this is a tough one.
But then you might have some movies that may be surprise hits that you wouldn't even think that would. It just depends on the time frame of how it runs, that it's not combative with a very popular film that we automatically know it's going to be successful.
I think Cocaine Bear might be something that's. I think
just by the title, people are just going to buy a ticket just because it says Cocaine
Bear. Wonka or The Color Purple, that might come out and surprise people when those two films actually come out. To your point, George, you could have some sleeper hits here for sure. But I think I agree with Shay. What's going to compel people to get out there? That's going to be a big question.
Yeah. If I had to predict, sorry, go ahead, OG.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I mean, out of everything on this list, I think the Mario movie is like almost like the surest bet at this point. It's kind of funny, but go ahead, Jay.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think if I had to rate each company's slate, if you will, I would have said that WB to me is the most variable. It could go gangbusters and do really well, and somehow they rally the DC crew to show up, but it could just tank bad, and profitability wise, they could just be like have a horrible year.
Yeah.
I think Universal to me seems like the most solid in terms of that slate of films. I don't see anything on there that is going to be seen as like super objectionable to the fan base or annoying. People know that they're showing up to Fast X for the dumbest action movie they could see. Like, it's not trying to change lives. And I think Disney is sort of in this. I would have said that Disney with this particular slate of films is kind of going to do what it's done the last couple of years, which is hits and misses. It's like it's you can't predict any one of them. That one's going to be a hit, that one's going to be a miss, that one's going to be a hit, that one's going to be a miss. So it's weird.
And because they have so many films coming out from so many different studios, I think they'll be solid no matter what. I mean, Ant-Man, I think will do something. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, especially, right? Yep. Indiana Jones Style Destiny, I think that's at least a $750 million film. Any way you slice it, right there. But you could have some misses. I mean, who knows what the Marvels does, right? Who knows what Little Mermaid does?
Yeah. Mermaid is really up in the air for me. Like, I can see that movie making $1 billion. I can see that movie making $1 billion, but I can also see it just dying at the box office too. I don't really know where that's going to land. Yeah.
I don't know. That's a really
it could sink or swim.
It can keep its fin or get the legs. There you go.
There you go.
But I mean, Haunted Mansion, that could do something, right? Wish.
No, I did see a couple teaser trailers for the Haunted Mansion at the Expo. That one to me can be a little bit of a wild card. It can go either way because what I find about that one is it had the comedy that Disney would throw in, but there were some elements to that had a little bit more of an edge to it. That's something that you wouldn't see with a typical Disney type of within that genre before. Because I mean, we all probably seen the Eddie Murphy Haunted Mansion.
Don't remind us.
Yeah.
So if Benicio del Toro, right, was still attached to the Haunted Mansion, I'd say bona fide hit. Yeah. Bona fide hit. But because he's out now, and I am encouraged to hear, George, that there is a little bit of an edge. There's a little bit of maybe a horror element to it. That's good. It's just that can go south too. So that's really
where
something.
that could be the wild card. It can go really either way because sometimes when you see a trailer or especially a teaser trailer, you may even get elements of scenes that are never even going to make it into the final cut. Right. And then you watch the film and it's like, well, where'd that scene go? Or you could, a trailer could either do a movie justice in a good or bad way, or it may do it injustice in a good or bad way. And unfortunately,
it's gone. It's gone. You never know what it's going to do.
And unfortunately, with the Haunted Mansion of what I've seen, it can go either way.
Yeah. No, I think it'll be fascinating. Go ahead.
One of the things we talked about a little bit, which have been talking around it, is the Marvels. And quite frankly, I don't hear much excitement around the Marvel. Like the fact that we are not mentioning a Marvel film. So like, I think that if Ant-Man and the Wasp comes out and kills it and Guardians kills it, then I think that the Marvels will perform well. Yeah, I think if Ant-Man comes out, and if Ant-Man comes out and it's Phase 4 level quality, and if Guardians comes out and it's Guardians Volume 2 quality, I think the Marvels just completely could be the first movie in the Marvel universe that completely tanks.
Honestly, if I could be very blunt, I've had a rash that excited me more than the Marvels.
Very much.
There we go. Yeah, I didn't watch what was that? Miss Marvel on Disney Plus? I didn't watch it.
A lot of people didn't. So there's not that necessarily that momentum playing into it, right? Captain Marvel obviously did very, very well as it followed Infinity War, right? And that was kind of the thing that was the post
controversial though, like did well financially, but controversial in terms of its reception.
That's kind of what I'm saying. It's like a very controversial film. Obviously, some people have soured on that film's star, let's say. So it's like I see the Marvels maybe and also too, I mean, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania has definitely, it's got some films behind it, right? And the trailer definitely looks interesting. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 has a lot of interest for the reasons that we've discussed. I think there's definitely a lack of enthusiasm for the Marvels when compared to the former.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, Phase 4 has done some damage to the Marvel branding.
I think it has
a little bit,
Absolutely.
That She-Hulk. I don't know.
Are we with one more question here with Jones? I know we were saying that we had some predictions, Jay. I heard your predictions, but I mean, what do we realistically think that could do at the box office, given some of the stuff that we've heard? Because I think that's the most intriguing one to me. Not necessarily I'm buying a ticket tomorrow, but definitely the most intriguing one from a success perspective, financial perspective, fan perspective, all that.
Well, so let's just talk about it from a story standpoint. If it tries to do what the last indie film did in terms of passing the mantle of Indiana Jones to somebody else, it will not do well. That is not going to fly with people. They're going to go, what the hell are you doing? This is an opportunity to land a plane that you almost crashed. You barely recovered. You got Harrison Ford to come back as the character. You got to land that plane, and he's not coming. This is it. This is it for him. And we're not doing Indy 6, right? So I think that Disney will treat that appropriately. I know that there's some reports that they're not treating that appropriately. Take those with a grain of salt.
We'll see.
We'll see. But I think that I personally think that look, Mangold's last two films were both phenomenal. Logan knocked it out of the ballpark. If he does what he did with Logan with Indy, then it's $1 billion film. It's over $1 billion.
It could be $1 billion too.
It could be $1 billion too. It could be $1 billion 3. Yep, absolutely agree.
Yeah.
I have a feeling if it is what Jay you're predicting, if that is the case, I feel that Indy is going to be what Maverick was this past year.
Oh,
interesting.
That's interesting.
Now, one more movie I want to kind of talk about that's not in any of these three studios is we have a Mission Impossible movie coming out this year as well. Speaking of Maverick, and Tom Cruise is like the star of all stars right now. That movie's going to crush. Now, it's going to make Paramount a boatload of money. I still don't think it's going to put Paramount on the map, though, to compete with a Disney or even a Universal this year. But we'll see. You never know.
By itself, no, but I think it'll be a heavy hitter for Paramount.
Absolutely.
I think there's definitely an enthusiasm for a renewed enthusiasm for Tom Cruise based on his success with Maverick. I mean, a lot of people kind of rediscovered Tom Cruise almost, and it was like, ooh, this guy is pretty solid. So I think there will be some enthusiasm just to get into the next Tom Cruise film because in order to relive the magic of Maverick a little bit through that with kind of a fresh story concept, which previously the Mission Impossible franchise has done very well. Yeah. So I think that is definitely certainly a thing. I also too, I think part of the Paramount slate also includes Transformers, right? So which hasn't been looked on that fondly, but hey, it does play in China.
I was watching Harloff, I think it was like last week, and I think they were talking about Michael Bay's not involved in this one, though, right? It's somebody, another director.
So I think he stepped away from Bumblebee was like the first one where new director. I think he had some involvement, but now that they've been kind of moving in this new direction, Michael Bay isn't. So.
And I never saw Bumblebee, but it got good reception. Good People said, "Hey, this is a great movie."
Yeah. That bodes well for the franchise because I'm not a huge Michael Bay fan. I mean, he's okay. Either. I mean, he makes like the Fast and Furious kind of type movies, right? Like what you say, Jay. It's not gonna change the world. That kind of stuff. But I don't know. Transformers is really kind of a cool IP, and I think that if you can get like the right kind of creatives behind that concept, it could really do amazing things.
It could, and I think that's why those films did it as successful as they did, because people were kind of like, they kind of liked that world, those characters, and so forth. It definitely has some opportunity for sure. Another one that is not on that list and so forth is John Wick 4. Come on, guys.
Oh yeah, huge, huge.
Yeah, no, oh man, that is. Whenever I see a John Wick film, it's like, okay, buying a ticket right now, and I can see gung fu for 3 hours if you want me to. Come on, this is great.
I'm even more excited about. I know it's not coming out next year. I don't believe. I think it's 2024. But the Ballerina, which is the offshoot of John Wick, with Anna de Armas.
Arma de Armas, yeah, she's in that, which sounds really, really cool. So
really good, yeah.
That'll be a kind of a cool franchise.
It's surrounding that the Angelica Houston character from what is it, 3, who's like leading the group of female assassins, basically.
Yes.
But I was gonna just comment really quickly. Mission Impossible, the last Mission Impossible, I can't remember the name of it. Because there's been so many of them at this point.
Yeah.
The last Mission Impossible. From a structure, Fallout, I think is what it was. From a structure perspective, the first 2 acts of that film are almost perfect from an action film perspective.
Yeah.
I think it goes a little long in Act 3, but
I think so too.
With Tom Cruise's amazing comeback. Look, Tom Cruise is the guy that you go, I feel comfortable. He already went through his challenging period, we'll call it, right? He's made it through that period. Yeah, the couch phase.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the couch phase, definitely. And I think that people have already railed on him for being a Scientologist and whatnot.
Right.
But the thing is, he went through that period of his life, and now he's just back on the who I am. You know what you're showing up to see. You know what I'm bringing. I think Mission Impossible could be pretty huge given the success of Top Gun Maverick.
Huge.
Yeah.
No,
I think the only thing holding it back is that it's a part 1. If it was like the solo, like that would have. I mean, who knows? But because it's being kind of split up, that's the only thing. Maybe part 2 might be more successful, but I mean, it's gonna be successful. Ain't no question.
100%. Now we're going to pivot to our very, very last topic. We won't spend too much time on this, but I think we should address it. There has been a lot of pretty bad, very bad, tragic news lately in the world of entertainment, both in film and in sports. And I'm going to go ahead and share your screen, Dre.
Please do.
So Jeremy Renner thanks his fans for their sympathies in his first social media post after the snow plowing accident. So it's been reported, I'm sure everyone at home knows, but that he had an accident with a snow plow. I guess it ran over his legs, and they had to airlift him to a hospital. Terrible stuff, you guys. Terrible stuff. And honestly, from that picture from the hospital bed, he's beat up pretty bad, but it looks decent. I'm hoping he just makes a full recovery. I really like Renner, and it was just really heartbreaking to see this. When I first heard the news, I thought it was just like, maybe he just got in like a car accident, got kind of banged up a little bit. But when I heard the details about the snowplow and running over his legs and all that, I'm like, oh my God, So this is huge. This is huge. But Jay, what were your overall thoughts on this, and just feelings on what was going on with Renner?
It was so bizarre to hear it because it came at a strange time in the week. It was the kind of thing where you just kind of went like, wait, what happened? Like, I think we do have a little bit of a perception that, these celebrities, they're larger than, it's Hawkeye. You know what I mean? Like you see this guy, he's fighting the Chitauri, he's going against Thanos. It's hard to imagine somebody that's that larger than life being one of us. And unfortunately, these kind of accidents just happen because of the world that we live in. And it's not a perfect world, and there's gonna be these kind of tragic events. And I think the most we can do as fans is just really put our thoughts, prayers, energy out to people who like Jeremy Renner, who were hurt, and more than anything, put aside any sort of, there's a time for critique. We're all awesome. We're not awesome. Sorry. That's not what I meant. We're all very into having critiques, this is when someone is dealing with this in life, it is not a time for critique. It is not a time for getting on his case about anything. All we can do is just give him our love and say, man, we've been a fan of yours for a really long time. We hope you get better, because that's tough. It's really tough.
100%.
Yeah, when I heard about this, I at first I was thinking, because I didn't have much information to go on, at least at first, I was like, oh, okay, maybe you got into a car accident or something like that. It was a big blizzard or whatever, if it hitting a lot of states. I'm sure it'll be all right. I'm sure it'll be fine. But then when the details started coming out about just how bad this accident actually was and how close to losing his life he was, I mean, let's be honest here. If his neighbor / doctor wasn't there, I mean, he might have frozen in the snow, and he might. I mean, who knows what would have happened? And that's a very difficult thing to even think about. And OG, you had some details about how close the Marvel cast really is, and how they kind of rallied around each other. Could you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, no, the Marvel cast is very, very close. And Jay, you might know this. They all the Avengers. They got
that's right.
The tattoo, right?
Yes.
They all have the same tattoo. There's a real camaraderie amongst them. I think it's just the first Avengers team, if I'm not mistaken. ScarJo, Chris Evans, right?
I believe you're right. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So they're family, and so I'm sure it's really hard for them as well to hear and see this stuff going on with Renner. I really like Renner a lot, man. I really like Renner a lot. So I'm wishing him, we all are, we're wishing him, a speedy and full recovery. Come on, Renner, you're an Avenger, man. You got this. You're gonna pull through, buddy. We love you.
He's
we
also
love you.
Renner is he's not a guy that gets out there and tries to get real messagey with his interviews, and he just seems like a very normal person. He seems like your average person. He doesn't seem, he's not talked about in the same sentences that the Chris's are talked about,
right.
Yes.
So I think he's just such an approachable person that it's hard to believe that, because when we see this kind of happen to this kind of celebrity, we go, whoa, this could have happened to me too, and that's just an important reminder of, like, when you're upset about Disney on Twitter, like, just think of the more important things that could be happening. Like, this is a good time for perspective. Like,
100%, Jay. Well said, brother. Well said. And even the accident itself involving the snowplow kind of points to what you're saying, Jay, about him being a real person.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like he's out there rolling up his sleeves, doing all, like, he's a real person. He's not, sipping, Chardonnay at some Hollywood party. He's out there, like, doing, like, real physical labor and what have you. And that says a lot about who he is, I think. Right. So it's interesting.
And I think with a situation like this is we're all human. We all bleed the same blood.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think when it comes down to it, anybody who goes through this situation should not be looked upon, whether they're an actor, an athlete, a Hollywood mogul, even someone in the political standpoint. It should just be looked at as a human that needs to be taken care of in a situation to get better.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
I wanted to go ahead and also highlight another thing that happened involving Disney to a certain extent on ESPN's broadcast on Monday Night Football. They had to cut their coverage of the game, and the NFL cut the game short because of the Damar Hamlin incident. And unfortunately, this player collapsed on the field and had to be resuscitated via CPR and even defibrillation for 9 minutes, I believe, before actually being transported to a local trauma center. Where
he had to be revived again. He had to be
revived again because he suffered another cardiac arrest. I was talking to you on the phone when this happened.
Like, when it happened, we were on the phone. You were like, oh, hold on, OG, hold on. And then you were telling me about it. And I honestly, I don't watch any sports. Like, so I don't even know how common or uncommon these kind of injuries are. And Dre was telling me this is very, very unusual. Very unusual.
Extremely unusual. I think there's only another incident of somebody having a cardiac arrest on the field. I think it was 1971, in which that last occurred. I mean, in the 100+ years of the NFL, I mean, this is very uncommon. This doesn't happen, and I think it definitely took the ESPN crew. I mean, it shocked them, and I want to go ahead and kind of highlight Ryan Clark and Scott Van Pelt for handling it as well as they did. Kind of thrust into a situation like that for like 90 minutes, providing coverage without a game behind them, and obviously talking about something that's so potentially tragic. They added, Ryan Clark specifically. Too. I mean, really added commentary that was so beneficial, and I gotta give it up to him because I gotta be honest, guys. Doing this, I didn't have appreciation for broadcasters as much as I do now. Now that kind of, have done live shows and so forth, it's tough. I mean, it's you don't want to say the wrong thing. You could be canceled if you do, right? You don't want to say inaccurate information, but also when you're dealing with a traumatic event, a trauma, a tragedy that is being witnessed by the entire world. That could be the end of your career if you say the wrong thing. And I want to go ahead and give it up to them for kind of getting people through that in the way that they did, and with the good vibes there. Also, too, I'm I don't do this very often, but I'll do it here. I have to give Bob Iger credit as well for putting out his statement on Twitter during that incident as well. That was a stand-up thing right there. Not making it about himself, not offering additional commentary, just as we've said, caring about a human being. I thought that was pretty profound. So I just wanted to go ahead and highlight those two elements right there because it did involve Disney, I think, in both instances, and this obviously happened on their network ESPN while it was being simulcast on ABC of all things. So pretty tough for sure.
Yeah.
This one was I'm like OG. I don't really watch. I used to watch sports a lot, and I just don't watch them much anymore. But this one was I saw it on Twitter first, right? And I've not seen any footage. I've just heard what happened. Yeah. And it was particularly disturbing for me because this is not a political statement. I'm not associating my story to what DeMar's story is. I'm not associating the two at all. I'm just saying what it made me feel. So just because people have made what I'm about to say political, and it shouldn't be. And I'm just saying is that I had myopericarditis either after COVID or after the vaccine. They're not really sure. And so I'm on heart medications and stuff right now. So when you see this kind of thing happen from a young, healthy person, and you're like dealing with issues that are somewhat related just because it's a heart thing, it really is like, oh, this is pretty crazy. Like this, I hope that this gets figured out because it hits you a little different when it's like, oof, that's something that could have happened to me. Yeah,
I mean, it shook me in the moment. And Jay, I was thinking about your story and others, and thinking about, wow, that could have been anybody I knew who played the game, or who has suffered from heart-related issues before. I mean, it was a shock to see those players react the way they did.
Yeah.
I mean, it really did affect me. I'm so sorry, Jay, but go ahead.
No. I was done. You're good to go. Yeah. It was just my point is these are very scary. These are very scary events. Yeah. And I mean, there should be more love in the world and less hate in the world. Let's put it that way.
Amen to that, bro.
I agree.
Amen to that.
I agree. George, you had a it kind of hits you a little bit harder as well, right?
This hit me home because technically, even though he played for the Bills, he was a Pittsburgh native. So he originated in Pittsburgh, and he was very big on a toy drive, a toy donation and it has now exceeded $3 million towards this donation. And just because of in his name. And you see everybody anywhere, no matter what part of the country you're seeing, pray for DeMar, pray for, and you're seeing it everywhere. So it's like, no matter whether or not that's your team or not, it's the respect of the person. And this goes beyond just the game. And this kind of ties back into our very first conversation. I'm glad we kind of saved this as the last one, because it's no matter, and Jay used this anecdote, so to speak, where it's like you got to choose and pick a team. Well, it's like, and that is true. A lot of people do. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of people need to stop choosing a side and just doing what's right.
Absolutely.
It was very
said.
rare that we had a unifying event, a cultural event, a cultural just this kind of event. And I don't mean unifying as bringing them people together necessarily. I mean, like, everybody kind of suffered through it at the same time. You know, it's just there's so many different realms of entertainment and different realms of information and so forth. We don't really have those kind of big cultural events anymore where we're all kind of experiencing it together, unless it deals with virus or something else like that, right? But just like a singular event, and it was quite extraordinary to see. George, you're right. I mean, he went to the University of Pittsburgh, and it's interesting. That toy drive he set up 2 years ago with a goal of $2,500, and immediately, I mean, GoFundMe apparently was getting $5,000 a minute with how many people poured in to donate to this charity and really show their support monetarily. I mean, it was an amazing thing. To see, I think it's actually eclipsed over 4 billion, George. So 4 million,
4 million.
So, which is heartwarming to see and hear, because this
and I really do hope that he is showing improvement. But I mean, he's not out of the woods yet. But I do hope, on top of everything, that he can see what an impact his life is, to be able to wake up, stand up on his own 2 feet, and see that the charity that he chose, of what people did for him in his name. And I think that would be a humbling experience and a win-win for all.
Now, Vash, that charity that is that still going on right now?
Yes,
it's still going on.
Okay. If you could, after the show, just DM that to me, and I'm gonna link it down below if anyone's interested in donating, or even if you don't have the money or the funds. I know it's hard right now for a lot of people. Even just sharing the link is beneficial. Whatever you can do, but yeah, we'll go ahead and share it in the show notes down below. I think that's pretty important, so we'll go ahead and do that. Absolutely.
Absolutely, 100%. Because I think that is it actually eclipsed. It's gonna go over $7 million here. So, that's cool.
That's great.
That's really
so. It gained awesome. Within a day an extra $4 million.
Incredible. Wild. And I'm so it's a heartwarming thing, and to kind of rally around just a human being was cool to see.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Well, Jay, I want to thank you, brother, for coming on, and we're all super excited for you to join the team. Story Geeks, first episode of Story Geeks will be coming out soon, so everybody at home, look out for that. Awesome to have you on, talking all kinds of stuff, film, movie, we even dipped into the parks a little bit. Jay, if you can just kind of remind everybody where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, just follow me here at Jay Shear. I'm trying to get my blue check mark now, so
yes,
put that out there. Just so if you want to follow me, we'll have some great discussions, and please follow the OG crew here as well, because I'll be a part of it, having these kind of conversations.
Yes. He will be here right here on the channel, OG55. And right over here, diagonal, is Mr. Vash Sky, the Dr. Dre, host of the Freshly Squeezed Show. If you can let everybody home know where they can find you on social media, my friend.
Yes. Well, the best place to find me is going to be on Twitter. It's right down there, at Vash Sky. Go ahead and just type that in. Should pop up right there for all the, as Christine Wastelands McCarthy would say, for all the
robust
discussion right there. Should be very good.
That never gets old, by the way.
I never gets old. It's so good.
She doesn't even sound like that, but it's just hilarious.
But Dre, you get so into it too. You're like, robust, like the way you do it. It's great. It's great.
Fantastic. But OG, do you have that drop for me real fast?
I do. Let me go ahead and do it. Here we go. Take it away, Walt.
And there's the biggest bargain of all.
Ah, the biggest bargain of all indeed. And that can only be found right here at OG or Orange Grove 55. We have such great shows like Orange Nerd, where we talk about all things studio. Now, Story Geeks, where we can go into the stories that bind us all together, right? And I think it'll be a great compliment to the channel, of course, Jay, so thank you so much. George, the amazing Citrus Corner, right, for all things Walt Disney World, and my own show, Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice, news, and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove. Thank you so much, guys, for having me on. I think this was I thought this was a blast. I can't wait to do this again.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you all for watching. Comment down below with all your thoughts and everything we taled about today. Oh, go ahead.
We got George.
Oh, what am I doing? George, I'm so sorry, brother.
You're good.
George, if you can let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, my friend. I am so sorry, George. I'm losing it.
You're good. You can find me on my YouTube channel, Disney Family Man 23. You can interact with me on Twitter at Disney George. You can check out the new podcast, A Walk with Walt. And of course, you'll find me here on my home base on Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info. And Jay, I just have to say, welcome to the crew. We're glad to have you and can't wait to see what you can bring extra to the table.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys.
Absolutely.
100%.
All right. And again, sorry about that, brother.
You're good.
You know, this is filmed for me.
I tend to blend into my surroundings. So
now, this is actually going to premiere in the morning tomorrow, but this is actually filmed at 8 p.m. California time. We're closing at around 8 p.m. California time, and I am not a night owl. At 8:30, I'm starting to come in and out a little bit. I'm not a night owl. I'm much more a morning person.
I'm hitting it at 11, so you'd probably be.
George is a party animal, man. I'm out by like 8:45.
Oh man, that's not good. That's not good, yo.
Yeah. But comment down below, everybody, with your thoughts on everything we talked about, like the 2023 movie slate, the maintenance issues at Walt Disney World. What we talked about, everything in terms of like fans and rooting for failure, and just the relationship between fandom and these studios. Comment down below. We'd love to hear from you. Again, Jay, welcome. Story Geeks is now a part of the OG 55 family. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always,
and Jay.
There's no turning back.
There we go.
There's always room for one more.
That's right. That's right. Oh, that would have been a better one. Damn it. All right.
There we go. There we go. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye, everybody.